In this episode of the Empowered and Embodied Show, we are diving deep into the transformative power of letting go, learning to trust yourself, and navigating life's transitions with intention. Our guest, Ramona Kossowan, shares her journey from feeling stuck to becoming a compassionate leader and coach. Together, we explore the importance of releasing old patterns, creating space for new possibilities, and finding safety in your body as the foundation for empowerment. This is a conversation filled with insights, metaphors, and actionable takeaways to help you step into your next chapter with clarity and confidence. Enjoy. Hi there. Welcome to the Empowered and Embodied Show. I'm Kim Romaine.
And I'm Louise Neal. We're two transformational coaches who are also fellow travelers on the path of growth and self-discovery. And we're inviting you along for the ride.
That's right. We're right here in the trenches with you, navigating the ups and downs of life. And each week we'll be sharing our own experiences, bringing you conversations with amazing guests, and exploring insights and strategies that have helped us find more clarity, confidence, and ease in our lives.
And trust us, we do not have it all figured out. We're learning and growing right alongside you.
So if you're ready to rise above the chaos, doubt, and confusion that sometimes life throws our way
and step into a more empowered and embodied version of yourself,
then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Empowered and Embodied Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Kim Romaine, joined as always by my lovely co-host.
Me, that's Louise Neal. That's me. And today we have our wonderful guest joining us.
Hi, it's Ramona Kossowan.
Ramona, we are so glad that you are here, and we are going to let the world know a little bit about you in just a little bit. But we want to start today like we start every day. What are we celebrating? What are we celebrating, friends?
Ooh, again, every week, right, Kim? We've been doing this now for a while.
Almost 3 years.
So that's
we're closer to 3 years.
That's a lot of celebrations, weekly celebrations. I am celebrating today. It's like, it's kind of like a pre-celebration. Like, I'm not just celebrating like the cool week that I had, but I'm also celebrating like what's coming up, and that I have been able to work in a way that allows me the space and the capacity to do the things that I want to be doing, both in my life and building my business. And I'm celebrating, like, there's some pretty cool things coming up in 2025. And I've been able to like really be thoughtful and be intentional about what that is and what I want to be putting out into the world. A lot of times I feel like, you know, what's that metaphor they use? Like, you're building the plane on the way down. Like, that's a lot of entrepreneurship. Is that the same?
No, you're building it while you're flying it. For the love of God, let it. I hope it's not going down.
I just imagine like standing on a cliff, and it's like you jump off the cliff and you're falling, and you're trying to build a plane.
No,
girl, you better have a parachute as well, then.
Exactly. No, I say it all the time because I'm always building the plane while I'm flying it. Because as a Manny Gen, that's what we do. We don't have a fully baked idea. We just are like, let's do the thing.
Well, I do feel it sometimes like I better hurry up and like frickin' put my plane together, because the ground is approaching pretty fast when you jump off a cliff. But I don't feel that way today. And maybe that's what I'm celebrating, is like just this feeling of like, yeah, like I got my shit together and like it's going to be awesome. So yeah, that's where I am. How about you, Ramona? What are you celebrating today?
I don't think I have any epic milestones. I still don't feel like I have my shit together, but it's, I think if I was to reflect, I think over this last year, just getting clearer on who I want to serve and how, and some bits and parts that I've kind of been holding on to because I've invested in those bits and parts, and deciding, no, I'm just going to kind of let that go and keep moving towards, and not keep that little one toe in the pool, so to speak. So that's always, I think, a good reason to think about celebrating. I'm just as bad as anyone that you forget to celebrate, and you just think, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? Right?
Yeah.
So it's helpful to pause and just notice what evolved over the period of like a year to where I am now.
Yeah, I love that. So today, as we are recording this, there's a full moon, and you said the word, or at least the concept of release, right? Like a letting go, and this full moon feels like there's a whole lot that needs to just be let go. Like it just needs to I don't even need to know what the hell it is. It just needs to flush out of the system and be gone. And so that is my celebration. I've been struggling with this full moon. The energy of it doesn't feel quite right for where I am, because I'm coming off of being sick for a couple of weeks. So I've been stagnant, not moving my body as much. So my energy hasn't been moving as much. In a lot of Kaphic energy, wet, damp, earthy energy. And really would like some Vata energy, some more air energy, some more movement, quick paced movements. But I don't feel that in this moon cycle. So, but hearing what you said, I was like, yes, and even though it may not be in that space that I want it right now, I can embrace and I can celebrate a release from where I am. And so that's what I'm going to celebrate today is I can release from where I am.
Well, I had an interesting part of that come up. I had a connection call earlier with a woman who does strategy work with business owners, but more spiritually encompassing. And I think for me, it aligns because I'm not just an all strategy, masculine energy sort of person. It actually makes me shut down. But one thing that we talked about specific to me was releasing whatever baggage is built up over the last few years of struggle, difficulty, obstacles, failures, purging that. So I go into this, what I'm going to do now with as an empty vessel, so to speak. So I'm not carrying all that crap around with me. And that's just a healthy reminder it doesn't matter what it took to get me here now. I want to empty that out and lean into what I'm excited about now and what energizes me.
Yeah. And it can be like, we can know, particularly those of us who have consciously stepped into that space of pouring out or releasing out, bleeding out what does not serve us any longer. And understanding that the vessel then is open for it to be filled with what you are ready for now. And yet that can still be really scary.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's
I was going to say that. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but this is me. This is, even though I don't want it, this is also part of me. And if I let it go, what's left? And yet, when you get in that cycle of process of actually draining all of that slough that doesn't need to be there, it's like the best mud bath in the world. It's like those toxins released to like nobody's business.
I'm smiling, not because what you're saying is funny, but because it was so epic at certain points that there was the "you've got to be kidding me" came up quite a few times. You've got to be freaking kidding me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Ramona, let the world know a little bit about you, and we'll continue our conversation from there, okay?
Great. So
Ramona transformed her life from stuck and directionless to the grounded, compassionate leader she is today as the founder of Ramona K Coaching. As a certified gentle trauma release practitioner, personal empowerment coach, and fitness professional, Ramona is passionate about empowering women to create deep, sustainable transformations in their lives after divorce, life transitions, or trauma. She gently makes way for women to clear the baggage that's in the way and build a new, empowered identity. When women see their worth, they show up with a newly revitalized energy that ripples out into their relationships, personal goals, and how they care for their bodies. It's never too late to make the change and embrace your greatness. Ramona, I feel like with what you said, those epic places, right? That release that we were just talking about, I feel like that is very coupled with what I just read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we go through phases, of course, where we're forced to grow or release, or we just simply make choices that take us that direction. With the work that I do, sometimes at certain junctures, we need some outside help to move through that. But it's always still empowering you, right? It's empowering you to trust yourself more fully, listen to your intuition more fully, and tap into your creativity.
What does it mean to you, right? Because you use this word in your own bio, and obviously it's in the title of our podcast. What does it mean to you to be empowered?
Well, one of the descriptions that came up when I was taking one of my certifications as a personal empowerment coach is that empowerment equals choice. And I do like this description because there are many things that we cannot control. And we're actually less empowered when we try to control everything. But empowerment is choice in how you choose to respond and how you choose to show up, and the vision that you build for yourself and the things that you create. So life is more joyful when we feel like we have choices. We bring more of our authenticity when we have choices. And to me, that's a big part of being empowered, whether it's releasing trauma, which does take away your choices, or choosing to nourish your body or move and strengthen your body in a way that serves you.
Yeah, that the whole idea of, as you both were talking about, like empty vessels and like letting go, and it's like, whew, like just imagining myself kind of, well, maybe I'm standing on the cliff edge again, I don't know, but imagining myself empty, to be honest, doesn't really feel empowering. It feels like emptiness. It feels like a not having. And Ramona, when you were talking, it's like, often I look for, like, where can I control the situation? Because it does feel like that is the opposite of empty for me. And this play that we have with ourselves, and this internal struggle that we have with ourselves, is that we know, because we've experienced this release of letting go, especially when we get to, right, like our age, let's just say, like, we've had a crap load of experiences and things happen. Like, we know when we get to the other side, we're like, oh yeah, like, whew, like it's a bit freeing, and it releases so much so that we can carry on and move forward. But at the same time, when I'm here now thinking about being empty, like that is scary. Like, do you see that? Like, I know, like, I feel like I'm in conflict, and I'm like all the time with these two pieces of me fighting it out to say, like, let it go, it's going to be great. And then the other piece of me is like, hang on to it, like, it's going to help you survive.
Oh, Pisces.
Ramona, do you see that? Like, do you see that in the women that you work with, or like, have you experienced that kind of that conflict? Like,
Of
yeah,
course.
I want to talk about, like, how do we come to bring ourselves together, I guess.
Well, it's going to go in stages, and we have to build that foundation of safety, because we can't be fully creative and let go when we don't feel safe. And I don't mean in the absence of fear or the absence of problems, but from the perspective of understanding our nervous system and how we're wired for survival and how trauma plays a part in that. With when I'm working with clients and they've released enough trauma that they can start to think clearly, connect to their body more safely, be safe to feel, You may have to move in baby steps. Your nervous system may not be all about that great big plunge that just triggers the heck out of your nervous system and puts you right back into survival mode. Like, so for example, some people say, oh, I want that quantum leap. Well, your nervous system may not be ready for the quantum leap. So let's just not do that. How about just gentle steps and build the capacity for both the uncomfortable emotions and the uncomfortable situations that come with setting boundaries, taking risks, and build your capacity to hold pleasure, joy, comfort, kindness, because if that didn't feel safe to you either, you're going to find a way to repel that.
There's a lot of alignment in the work that you and I do, Ramona. And I feel like that play where you just said, right, I want you to have that quantum leap. And yet I know that if you take that quantum leap, you're going to end up not just back where you were, but re-traumatizing yourself because you're not ready. And it's so hard to see somebody who is craving that up leveling, that change so much, and yet has whatever distance they have to go. I don't even want to say a long road because we're not here to judge the distance. It is their road. And yet you know that they're not ready. How do you start to help people find that place of acceptance for where they are now so you can take those baby steps? Because I think that even front loads that place of baby steps is coming to that place of acceptance.
Yes, and if there's a couple ways you could look at it. One is from the perspective of transitions, referencing one source would be the book Transitions by William Bridges. And the other part would be the map of consciousness, based on the book Power versus Force by David Hawkins. Is there's emotional levels. We can't bypass them. We can try. So this is where people get stuck. They're in the guilt, shame, and apathy. That's where trauma resides. And you can climb your way up into, past the fear, through the anger, into judgment, pride, but you won't stay there. And you try to bypass into love and light and use spirituality as a way to bypass your human experience. Nothing wrong with spirituality and healing. I'm all for that. But sometimes we got to move through the stuff. It doesn't mean you got to stay there. And from the perspective of transitions begin with an ending. And here's something that's inevitable is when I'm working with a woman who's releasing trauma, inevitably, without fail, she will go through a transition. It's not even because something outwardly is changing and that's obvious. She's becoming a different person and you're unraveling the structures that held you in this persona. And that's where grieving is necessary. So have you allowed yourself to grieve, to fully name and explicitly blame what happened, what didn't happen, what should have happened, what's never going to be? And this does serve a purpose. So from that perspective, have you allowed that grieving process to actually move into the neutral place? You're still not in acceptance yet. Acceptance is way further along, but you start to feel a little more at peace. Does that help to see it from that lens?
Yeah. And I'm really glad that you took it even further back than acceptance, right? Because so often, again, people show up. I know my clients show up and I'm feeling X, Y, and Z. They may or may not even recognize that trauma is a component of what's happening. And then they're like, but I'm ready for what's next, because they just want to not be in pain and discomfort anymore. And yet the reality is absolutely, we want to help you get there. We want you to empower yourself to step into that place. And to get there means there's all this pre-work that needs to be done before we get there. And that's very often the work that I think folks want the shortcut to. They want the pill. They want the quick release, what we were talking about, right? Coming to that empty vessel, and that I want the empty vessel, but I don't want the empty vessel syndrome at the same time. Right, Louise? But having that opportunity to say, there is a process that we work through. There is a reason why this is happening. And oh, by the way, we may have gotten you all the way to acceptance, and you'll go through another transition, and there's more that needs to be done. Or not. We'll see when we get there.
What I
And
like
so,
to take some of that, like the hardness out of it, is it's not like you're grinding through it all the
no.
time. And you can be grieving while experiencing joy and pleasure. You can be
Yes,
grieving while
please.
catching glimmers. You're not grieving 24/7, right? You can still, it's just, what I love about the processes that I do is that you can experience an immediate release.
Mhm.
But then there's working with the aftermath. You're not the person you were when whatever happened, but you're not the new person yet. You're in between. So you allow yourself grace and openness and spaciousness. So rather than it being like this never-ending grind, which isn't the case, it's allowing things to unfold and let your body do its thing.
Integration.
Yeah. What resonates with me, Ramona, is that it's, when we go through kind of this transition, one of many or big, small, whatever that is, it's like, it's that understanding that we are different. Like, I think what happens a lot of times, I know for myself, is that I try to use old tools to work on the present me. But the present me is different than, the person I was in the past, where all those tools, well, they may or may not have worked. Like, who's to say? But those were the tools that I used back then. And now I try to use those tools now, and they don't work. And then there's a lot of conflict and frustration to say, well, like, now it does feel hard because I'm a different person, but I don't have the tools to, like, that I need to be here. I know I'm not done because it doesn't feel like I'm done, but I still don't have tools, or I don't feel fully resourced to be able to, like, be in this space. I don't like this mushy space of transition, right? So to both of you, because you both are in this space of, like, really helping people kind of transition through this trauma and understand what that is. So my question is for both of you is, like, like, what do I need, or what do our listeners need, who, like, we've started on this transformational journey where we're doing okay, but yet we don't have those tools or resources that we feel to either keep us here or to move us forward.
Did you want to go first, Kim, or?
Oh, go ahead. I'd love to hear what your suggestions are in terms of kind of tools and resources to help individuals along the way.
Well, I think it's helpful to understand that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. When you are in the neutral zone, which is comes after the ending, and it has blurred lines between ending, neutral zone, and the new. It's not like an instant crossover and you're done. No, grieving's still going to show up. This is where you need to have open space, mentally, emotionally, physically, to allow the downloads to come. I like to think of it like a renovation. You've done some demo work. You've taken down the old structures that aren't you, and they never were you. They were just your protection. And you haven't fully built the new yet, but you need to kind of work on your design and all your desires in the new aren't fully formed yet. So you can start to get curious, try different things, explore different things, give yourself that open space to consider things, but commit to nothing at that point, or take action, but not like, lighting your butt on fire and blazing off into the sunset. Slow the heck down, right? The neutral zone is where we tend to skip over in our society, and allow yourself to consider what part of me is not me anymore. What do I identify with that is not me? And what do I want to lean into? And this is where if I'm working with a woman, I spend some time on the old archetype or archetypes that were their dominant protection that aren't their true selves. And then the new persona, we take aspects of what is already your core innate you. But a lot of you is malleable. You're not fixed. So we start to create the persona of the new you. So we can refer to her as your woman energy, your wholeness, all parts, good, bad, ugly. come into this wholeness, but she's the one who's empowered. And it takes time to get to know her and cultivate and start to embody her.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think that process that you're talking about is really what I consider to be the healing process, because I feel like we do go through the deconstruction phase, right? There's a little bit of understanding there. There's a little bit of that starts to come online, and very often we skip from that to the resolution phase, right? And it's that place of, okay, now I'm ready to build what's next. But that healing phase is what I feel like you're just what I would call the healing phase is what is that middle piece that, and it's so beautiful. And yet we skip over it all the time because it is not fast. It can be fast. Like again, it's not about the time, but it's not rapid. It's very, I consider it to be almost melodious, because we have this opportunity to find new melodies, to find some harmonies, to find the softness, to find those places that true acceptance can come in, non-judgmental acceptance, right? Where we look at ourselves and we say, oh, this is self. Look at her. There she is. I see her. Right? That to me is what is healing. Because that's when we get to come to a place of truly knowing ourselves. So when we get to that resolution phase, we understand what we're building. And so there's a multitude of tools that can support. I know Ramona mentioned a couple, but it is that place of slowing down, finding the openness, as you said, to create space to heal. And that's the part that I wish people didn't skip over, because that's where the magic is, in my opinion. Does that answer your
when you percolate, right? You percolate
Yes.
in that neutral zone. You feel discombobulated, rightly so. You percolate, and then suddenly you lean in and you grab and fits and starts, and you start to get clear on some things and blurry on others. Or you try some things on for size. You're like, no, not now. And then you lean into something. You're like, oh, this really feels good to me, right?
Yeah.
And you begin to step further into the new.
Yeah. It's like when you're making a delicious stew or soup and you taste it at first and you're like, I don't know. Does it need something else? Well, if I put something else in an hour from now, when it's done cooking, is it going to be too much of that thing? But like, it's the testing. Like, can I put a little bit more oregano in? Can I put in a little bit more of this spice in? And then you get it to that unctuous, delicious place when it's ready. So yeah, I love that percolating idea.
This is typically a stage too where I encourage women, if it resonates with them, to do something like akin to a vision board, to actually start to get clear on what resonates with them, what feels good, even if it doesn't make sense based on what they used to think was them. No judgment. Everything's on the table. So you can kind of grab the bits and pieces of the vision, and whether it's an actual vision board or something a little different, journaling, take that new course, go on that trip, make a new friend.
Sounds like play.
Exactly. It is playing, because that's your creative juices, and that's where you'll find the bits and parts that go, yeah, this feels good to me now. This feels more like me. Or this is a little bit scary, but I want to move this direction. It feels right.
Well, and Louise, to go back to that, like I don't want to feel empty, but I don't want to feel full. There's no space to start to play with these things when we're already overfilled. And so, right?
Yeah. It really comes like as you're both talking. It's like Ramona, you use like the renovation metaphor, and Kim, you're using the soup one, and for me, and I think for many folks, it's this idea of like, I need to know the outcome before I get started. Like, I need to know what the house looks like. I need to have it fully designed, the paint colors, the fabric swatches, like all of those things before I start to demo, because it's like, who knows? I might need that. I might need that wall. I might need that thing. And so there's a lot of that, I think, that goes into it. And then Kim, like with your metaphor, it's like, I'm going to follow a recipe because if the recipe, because it gets 5 stars on Google reviews, then it must be the way. So I'm not even going to taste it until it's done because somebody else knows because it's got, right. And so there's this idea of like we go from where we are to the finished product, and that's it. There's 2 stages: where we are and the finish. And that's just not true.
No, you're missing the fun stuff. No. And clearly you've never cooked with me because this is not how I take a recipe and go, thanks for the guidance. And then like do whatever the hell I want with it.
I screw with it. Screw with it.
100%.
You'll have the framework. But what I like to think about too, that is a couple things come up with what you're saying, Louise. One is another metaphor I've used with clients before is that it's like the backpack that they're carrying on their back, all this baggage and BS from other people's stuff. And they're dumping that thing out into a bonfire. They're throwing the backpack over a cliff. It's their it's the baggage from other people's stuff. It's not their essence. Your essence remains. But then you're just going to decide what comes with you on your next journey that is not baggage. It's actually for your trip. The other thing that really stands out is quite often when I'm supporting women, they've been through a stage in their lives when they had to be hyper vigilant of their surroundings and always be 15 steps ahead. And that's just a form of protection because they weren't safe. Things went off the rails, mentally, emotionally, physically, if they didn't go 10 steps ahead and be uber aware of everything and everyone around them, which is a trauma response in so many people. And it's just understanding to trust yourself that where you think you're going may not be the ultimate where you are supposed to end up, but you start moving and things come together. So I can't tell you how many times I've crossed paths with the right people or the right situations or the right wisdom, and it steered my ship just slightly differently than where I thought it was going.
Yeah. The heads up view, right? Like really keeping an eye on what's there instead of like head down and pushing through. I do my renovations. I love this metaphor because I do my renovations, my home renovations, much like it's like, ooh, let's see, right? Ooh, let's see where that will go. Or, ooh, let's see what that paint will look like on the wall. Or I know that I want to have a piece of furniture in my room, but I'm not quite sure what it is until I'm at a flea market and I see it and I go, oh yeah, that's the thing. Right. And that for me has been like this journey of like really understanding my intuition, like that I know, and I can start on something and I can use my intuition to say, that's really not me, or that's not what I want or expected. But it's that intuition piece and it's that self-trust that is what both of you are talking about, is like, how do we trust ourselves enough to trust that it's a process, that it's a journey, it's not a destination or a final product.
It's so funny because I felt like we were going on to a different metaphor with like the ship and the direction of the ship. And I was like, ooh, yeah, designing your own sextant. But like going back to the home renovations, when so often I know my clients will show up and it's like, but I don't know what I want. Intuitively, I can tell you no if it's something that I clearly don't want, but I don't know what I do want because I haven't experienced it yet. And that's where, again, I think play is so important because it allows us to say, okay, you haven't experienced it before. What if you're not making a life decision and you just go see what you even like in this area, right? With the vision boards, you don't even have to go invest in anything. Like, do you like this picture or this picture, right? So even just starting to play a little bit. Louise, I know when we first went Oracle card shopping, and you're like, how do you decide what cards to buy? I'm like, you just know, right? You just know because you can pick it up and you can say, yeah, I'm really drawn to this today. And then you say yes or no. I don't know, Ramona, how do you start working with your clients to help them find that place of, oh yeah, I get that. That's me. And I can say yes to that.
Usually when they're at that stage, they've released enough trauma that they can come back and feel their body more safely and start to see the possibilities of a bright future. But here's the thing, like if you've been in survival mode for years or decades, you weren't cultivating that. And so this is where you're just going to need to, like you say, play, self-care, forge new situations that feel good to you now, whether it's experiences, people, organizations, friendships that support the version of you that feel more like you now. Because sometimes you're going to outgrow the people, the circumstances, the organizations, even the religions where you used to identify. Not that you have to get rid of everybody, but sometimes people don't match you at all when you start to embody this version of you. And it's no shade to them. It's just you're not a match. So you need to cultivate some new things that bring out, like I can't grow and expand to my fullest without connecting to other people who bring that out in me and help me to feel brave enough to do it. So it stay in the same rut with the same people is where you stay stuck.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and a key there, like I want to underline for people, is feeling safe in our bodies. We cannot be in touch with our intuition if we do not feel safe in our bodies. We just can't access it.
No.
And so baby steps again to how do we start to feel safe in our bodies? How do we start to understand the language of our bodies? Because that is the key to knowing, oh, I could say yes to that. No, I want to say no to that. I don't really care about that, right? Because there's a whole bunch of stuff, by the way. Like, I feel like it's always this yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Like, I'd love for people to be able to be like, I really don't give a shit. Like, it's okay to say that as well.
Yeah, not everything has to be a bolt of lightning, right? It's
No.
the, like, trauma in itself, like, this is one of the things that I enjoy in this process is releasing enough trauma allows you to free up some space, just working with your unconscious nervous system. But then it's also recognizing that you have old patterns that you're gently easing out of. So anytime that you tune into your body's needs, tune in, right? Because you get used to numbing out and disconnecting and being not mindful. So if you think about how you would lovingly care for a toddler, did they get enough to eat? Did they get enough sleep? Did they get a hug today? Did we speak nicely to them, or did we ignore them and pretend they weren't in the room? Like, so that same level of attention should be a no-brainer to give ourselves.
Yeah. For me, kind of like this getting in touch with my intuition, with my body. I love the idea of like thinking about how am I treating myself like a toddler. Because it really does like resonate. It's I think about that when I talk to myself, right? Like around the imposter and like how am I talking to myself? But I never really thought about like how am I treating myself? Am I making sure that I am doing those other things as well to really allow my inner child, right, my inner self to feel safe and feel. The word that came to mind was comforted, right? Like that's really right. When I think of when my kiddo, when he was little, like he took the biggest risks when he was comforted, right? When he knew he could, right, ride that bike or learn to skateboard. There was a comfort there from someone else that allowed him to take those risks. So I really like that. That really resonated with me because it was more than like it's more than just talking kindly to yourself. It's like how are you fully treating yourself so that you do create that inner safe space. I like that.
So I was in a webinar with Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps the Score earlier this week. And one of the things that he said is that we don't heal in isolation. So very often when a trauma occurs, it is the people, it is who you are with that is the greatest impact of you of that trauma on you. So if there is somebody there that says you're going to be okay, that is going to impact how you work through that trauma and how that trauma stays with you through your life. If there is an absence of anybody there telling you that it's going to be okay, that trauma sits in you in a different way for a different period of time. And allowing ourselves to understand that it's the people. So talking about being comforted, not comfortable, right? That's very different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But being comforted, having somebody there who has your back is absolutely key to this healing process that we're talking about. So I love that you brought that through. Thanks for sharing that, Louise.
I love too that you just used that statement, because I've used that. Whereas, okay, one of the ways you feel safe is you have your own back. So what I mean by that is you will not abandon your values, your morals, your well-being, your most important boundaries to please, placate, perform, or be accepted. And your body will innately feel safe when it knows unconsciously you've got your back. And this is quite often the first time you've maybe ever had that. If you didn't have that at the times you needed it, at a critical time when you endured something that was wounding and you were left in isolation, or you were shamed, right? Or abandoned. And of course that's cemented in your psyche. So this is you coming back to, I am now taking ownership of this vessel. I'm taking ownership of the well-being first and foremost, and then I'll make my choices accordingly.
Which takes us back to the beginning of the conversation when I said, what does it mean to be empowered? To be in that place of choice.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Love how that worked.
And in come the Oscars music. Da-da!
Exactly.
And then they pulled us off the stage.
So I would love for us to think about what are those moments in this conversation today that we do want to highlight, circle, underline to make sure that our listeners are taking away with them.
So I would think a couple of things stand out is one, each stage has a purpose. You don't need to rush through where you need to be. Don't try to grind out alone forever. You're not meant to do that. And think about starting right this minute. How can I take ownership of my well-being? It doesn't mean that you don't ask for support, but you take ownership of it. It's now my number one full-time freaking job to make sure that my needs are being met.
Yeah. I'm really going to sit and really, I'm going to percolate, on this idea of how am I deeply caring for that inner child. Right. So I do some parts work, with myself. So I have this understanding of what that part is. But I don't know that I've ever asked it, what does it need to feel good? What does it need to feel healthy or nourished, or comforted? And so I really appreciated that part of the conversation probably the most. It's definitely what I'm going to be taking away to noodle on and percolate. Kim, how about you?
So much of what both of you said. And I do want to also pull a thread through that, the importance of metaphor. We started this conversation with Louise throwing herself off of a cliff and trying to build a plane. And we've had renovations and backpacks that have been, emptied out and lit on fire, and sextants being used, and writing a ship, and
soup and
all of, but there's a reason why there were so many metaphors in this conversation. And it's because the work that we're doing, particularly in that healing space, right? That middle space that we skip over so often. there's not a lot of direct language that we have in that space. There's some clinical language, absolutely, that can be used in there, but there's not a lot of accessible language for that healing space. And so when we lean on things like metaphor, it gives us something that allows us to understand the process that we're going through a little bit easier. And so I just wanted to kind of pull that out and say, it didn't go unnoticed how many metaphors were flying around this conversation.
Don't forget the coffee making.
And the coffee, there were lots and lots of metaphors today, Fred. And they're so cool and they're so helpful. So I just wanted to pull that through just as a way for people to start to think about, ooh, that could be something that could be helpful when I'm not sure what's happening. How could I use a metaphor to help me here? Ramona, it has been an absolute joy having you on the program today. Thank you so much for making the time. Where would you like people to connect with you in the world?
Well, you can always head over to my website at ramonakcoaching.com. From there, you'll have links to my socials. So if you want to listen to me talk at you some more, I've got videos on my socials. I've got, some fun, exciting programs cooking up for the end of 2024 and the beginning of 2025. So this may or may not be about trauma, but it may be about how you're taking care of that toddler, so to speak, and how you're taking care of that body, that vessel.
Beautiful. Well, we will include all your links in the show notes.
Wonderful.
Love it. Thanks again. And thanks everyone for just tuning in and being a part of this conversation. It was a goodie. It was a gooder. It was fantastic.
A gooder?
It was a gooder.
Gooder. And I'm interested to hear what listeners like about these metaphors, which one really resonates with them.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Drop us a note and let us know which ones are hitting a sweet spot for you.
What are you cooking up? Coffee or
something?
Are you jumping off a cliff? Which one is it?
You're building the plane while you're flying. You're not diving.
Not doing a nosedive.
No, please no. Don't do that.
Please don't do that.
No. If you're doing that, please reach out. We've got your back.
Yeah, we'll throw you a parachute.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye for now.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
And that's all for this week's episode of the Empowered and Embodied Show. We hope today's episode has sparked something within you. Remember, we're all on this journey together. If something did resonate with you today, why not share it with a friend who might need to hear it too? You can find us everywhere you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave a review. Your feedback not only helps others find the show, but also helps us understand what's most valuable to you. Until next time, be kind to yourself, stay curious, and remember, we're walking right alongside you. Thanks for being part of our community.